So you know the song Whiskey in the Jar.
As I was going over the western Kerry Mountains.
But what version pops into your head? Is it a fellow with a guitar in the corner of a pub? Or is it that massive, roof-lifting rock anthem?
I then produced me rapier, saying stand and deliver, for you are a bold deceiver with your ring-a-ma-toon-a-ma-ta.
But where does a song like that even come from? I mean, who were actually the ones that grabbed it first and made it the song to sing? Well, it's probably one of the most famous traditional Irish songs in history, but its journey into the modern world really kicks off in the 1960s. During the huge folk revival at the time. Over in the United States, you had the likes of the Clancy Brothers getting a hold of it, and an American folk group called the Highwaymen. They even put it on a live album in 1962. But back home in Ireland, well, that's where the Dubliners come in. They really took the song by the scruff of the neck, didn't they? It became their signature tune, a proper calling card. They recorded it 3 different times between 1967 and 69 alone. By the end of the decade, you basically couldn't walk into a pub without hearing it. It just became part of the furniture. And it wasn't only the big names. You had local groups all over Ireland, bands like the Flying Column, belting it out in pubs and cementing its legendary status all over the place. Sure, loads of folk acts were having a crack at it back then. From Burlides to Limelighters, even Peter, Paul and Mary did a version. And let's just say that their version was just a little bit soft. A bit too nice, if you know what I mean. But hold on a second. If this was just a dusty old ballad, the kind of thing you'd hear sung by fellas in orange jumpers, how did it survive? Why didn't it just fade away, become a relic that only your parents remembered?
Now I counted out his money and it made a pretty penny. I put it in me pocket and I took it home to Jenny. She sighed and she swore that she never will deceive me. But the devil take the women, for they never can be easing with your...
How exactly does a quiet folk tune become a rock monster? For a long time, rock musicians wouldn't go near it. It was seen as something from a different time, a bit old-fashioned, you know? And that all changed in 1972. Picture this. The lads in Thin Lizzy are in a rehearsal room upstairs in a London pub called the Duke of York. There's a bit of a lull, and Phil Lynott, who, of course, knew the song backwards from his early days on the folk scene in Ireland, just picks up the guitar. He starts messing about, and then, just for a joke, he launches into Whiskey in the Jar. And who happens to walk in at that very moment? Only their manager, Ted Carroll. He hears it, and he doesn't think it's a joke. He hears a massive hit. So, did the band immediately see the genius in it? Were they ready to drag this old tune into the world of rock and roll? Not a chance. They were completely against it. They were actually planning to just chuck it in on the B-side of their next single. But the head of their record label, a fella named Dick Rowe, he heard this new arrangement and basically put his foot down. He said, "No, that's the single." So it comes out in the winter of 1972, and what happens? It rockets to the top of the Irish charts and stays there for 17 weeks. 17. It becomes their biggest ever hit in the UK, getting all the way to number 6. But here's the thing, Thin Lizzy grew to hate the song. It became this massive weight around their necks. But the irony of it all, despite them not being able to stand it, Eric Bell's guitar playing on that track became the definitive version, the absolute blueprint for how everyone else would play it from then on, and who took that exact blueprint and rode it all the way to Grammy glory. How did one of the biggest, baddest metal bands on the planet turn a folk song that was turned into a rock song as a joke into an award-winning masterpiece? Well, in 1998, the American metal giants Metallica put out an album called Garage Inc., Garage Incorporated, and on it was a heavy, snarling, absolutely thunderous cover of Whiskey in the Jar. But it was, for all intents and purposes, a direct cover of Thin Lizzy's version. They took Eric Bell's unique guitar riff and just put it on steroids. The result was massive. They won a Grammy for it in the year 2000 for Best Hard Rock Performance. Since then, it has been a guaranteed crowd pleaser for rock bands all over the world. You've had U2 have a go at it as well, Bryan Adams, Simple Minds, even Pulp. So, it's a 20th century success story, right? A modern rock anthem built on the back of a 60s folk revival. What if I told you that we're not even scratching the surface? What if I told you its roots go back much, much further? What if this this song is actually knocking on 400 years old. The truth is, Whiskey in the Jar is not a modern song at all. A well-respected folk music expert, Alan Lomax, suggested its story begins way back in the 17th century. The melody itself is seen as the perfect expression of that lonely, defiant outlaw spirit. It tells a great story, a cinematic one, about a highwayman, a footpad as they were called, who robs an English officer. Sometimes he's called Captain Farrell up in the famous mountains of Cork and Kerry. But what happens when our hero trusts the wrong person? Does the outlaw get to ride off into the sunset with his gold and his girl? Not at all. Not in this story. The song is a tale of pure betrayal. It's got everything. Whiskey, lust, a cunning woman, jail, the whole lot. After robbing the officer, our highwayman brings the gold home to his girl, Jenny, or sometimes Molly, depending on the version. And while he's asleep, she betrays him. She pours water into his pistol and nicks his sword. So when he wakes up drunk in her bed between 6 and 7 in the morning, who does he find surrounding him? Captain Farrell and his soldiers. With his weapon useless, he's dragged off to jail. But even then, he doesn't go quietly. He apparently lamps one of the guards on the way to his cell. But here's the million-dollar question. The one that's got historians scratching their heads for decades. Was this highwayman a real person? Did somebody actually live this story? Or was it just a grand bit of myth-making to entertain people in pubs? Well, Alan Lomax, he wrote that the song probably grew out of an even older one, a 17th century ballad about a real historical poor boy from County Roscommon named Patrick Fleming. But who was Patrick Fleming? According to a thing called the Newgate Calendar, which was basically one of those old sensational true crime papers from London that loved all the gory details. Fleming was an absolute monster. They claimed he was a proper sociopath who cut off a man's nose, his lips and his ears, and even threatened to cook a countess's 4-year-old son into a pie. So, do we believe all of that? Do we trust the sensational English press of the day, who also said in their later years that the Irish prefer to sleep with their pigs? Or does the original Irish ballad tell a completely different story? Was he a monster? Or was he a kind of Robin Hood figure from the mountains? The original ballad, which was called Patrick Fleming Was a Valiant Soldier, paints a completely different picture. It suggests this highwayman was more like a guerrilla fighter, one of the rapparees from the south of Ireland, who would hide out in the mountains and cause trouble for the English authorities. He's not a monster in this version at all. He's a daring, wife-stealing Robin Hood type. The song was likely what they called a goodnight ballad, basically a dramatic story printed on cheap sheets of paper and sold to the crowds who'd gather to watch a public execution. And it is a historical fact that Patrick Fleming was executed. He was hung up in chains as a grim warning on the high road to Dublin back in April of 1650. So this highwayman died, but his legend, his story, lived on for centuries and travelled across the world. But what's the final twist in this tale? What's the hidden secret that nobody really talks about? The one tiny change that made this song immortal. You see, for hundreds of years, the traditional versions of the song, like the ones the Dubliners recorded back in 1968, had a chorus that ended on the exact phrase, whiskey in the jar. Musically, it's a bit tidy. It just kind of resolves itself neatly. But do you remember Phil Lynott messing around at that pub in London? Well, in that moment, he did something that was a stroke of absolute musical genius and so simple. He added an O and an extra upward note to the very last word of the chorus. Instead of singing whiskey in the jar, he sang there's whiskey in the jar-o. Now, why does this one single letter, this one little sound matter so much? Have you ever noticed it? That one tiny syllable completely changes how the song feels. It takes what was musically a bit of a dead end, a stiff marching band kind of finish.
Now I went unto my chamber, all for to take a slumber. I found some golden jewels, and for sure it was no wonder, for Jenny found me charges, and she filled them up with water. Then sent for Captain Farrell to be ready for the slaughter, with your ring-a-ma-tune-a-ma-ta. Whack for the daddy-o, whack for the daddy-o, there's whiskey in the jar.
It was the perfect little tweak to get it ready for the stadiums of the 20th and 21st centuries. So when you listen to it, what are you actually hearing? Are you just hearing a modern rock cover? Are you just listening to a classic Irish drinking song? Or are you maybe hearing the ghost of a 17th century outlaw, an echo from an execution back in 1650, a story that perfectly captures the thrill of adventure and the cold, hard reality of betrayal. But anyway, before you go, if you could go the video, I would really appreciate it. You've no idea, but just that little simple click on that like button and even a comment below as well really helps this video reach a broader audience. You have far more control over these videos than you might think. If you find yourself coming back here every so often and you're not subscribed already, please consider doing so you don't miss any future uploads. There's also a channel shop there too, which has a load of Irish music merch, all designed by either myself or my father. I've actually designed one for this video too, for Whiskey in the Jar, which I absolutely love. I think it's great and I had an absolute blast designing it. But all in all, everything there on the shop comes back and helps support the channel long term, helps keep these videos coming. I wouldn't be able to keep at it if it wasn't for your support. So thanks very much to you all as always. But look, I'll leave it at that. Thanks a million for watching again. Let's have a chat about it all down in the comments. Slán go fóill, cheers.
Sure, he's in the Irish Army. If I can find a station in Cork or in Killarney, and if he'll go with me, we'll go roving through Kilkenny, and I'm sure he'll treat me better than my only sporting Jenny. Wish her ring a tune a ta. Whack for the daddy-o, whack for the daddy-o. There's whiskey in the jar. Wish her ring a tune a ta. Whack for the daddy-o, whack for the daddy-o. There's whiskey in the jar. Oh!